Helvellyn. I wonder how many of you have scaled to the top of this peak, the third highest in England. If you have, well done. But it may also have struck you that the name sounds sort of Welsh, or it may not have struck you as such. If you thought it sort of sounds Welsh, well, you're pretty correct. The word Welsh might not be exactly correct, even though it's not particularly problematic. It might be better to call it a Brythonic word or even a Cumbric word, but these are terms with a great deal of overlap. So what do we think Helvellyn means? This is not too problematic. Now, a good number of you will know of the Welsh word melyn, which we translate as yellow. It comes from the word male, honey. So melyn is more or less honey coloured. So it doesn't mean the bright yellow of ink or flowers. Now, in certain conditions, the melyn linites or mutates to felyn. So that's not a problem. So Helvellyn means something which is honey coloured, yellowish, but this can be quite a broad type of yellow. It can be sort of brownish a bit, maybe even slightly sort of reddish or orangish. The colour terms are quite problematic in such terms, but melyn is pretty common in Welsh place names. If you have a Google, or you may well know about some already. Right, so we've got melyn out of Helvellyn, but what we need to do with place names always is to look at the earliest forms we can find. That's always the first step, to see if there are any earlier forms, because place names change all the time. People reinterpret them, dialects change, accents change, people get confused, people write them down wrongly, and then that becomes the standard form. So place names are a minefield. We're fortunate here, and we do have a medieval form, and this, rather than Helvellyn, is Hâl Felyn. Right. So we need to look now for a Hâl in Welsh, and in fact there is a word. In fact, there's sort of a group of related words. I'll start with Hâl as its root. Now, this is ultimately the same root as sal, as in salt, or in Latin, saline, or desalinate. It's the root sal, which means salt. In Brythonic, initial s becomes h. That's why you have the river Severn in English and Hafren in Welsh. This is a regular sound change, it's not problematic. Now, the original meaning seems to be of sal, or hâl in Welsh, seems to have been salty. But this has developed a meaning of dirty, polluted, contaminated. You'll find that in Welsh place names like Rhytalog, the dirty ford, Rhytalog. It's been re-etymologized as talog, but anyway. So we then think that from this sort of dirty, poor meaning, developed another meaning, tested in a few place names in Wales possibly, of Hâl means of uncultivated, poor quality land. So the meaning is going for it. So sal gives Hâl, the root sal, a Proto-Indo-European word, gives Hâl in Welsh, Hâl later. It goes from the meaning salty to meaning dirty, contaminated, to meaning poor, not easily cultivated land. It's feminine, so that causes the melyn afterwards to change to felyn. In Welsh, it was changed to felen, but we're not sure if Cumbric corresponded exactly to Welsh in this respect. So Hâl Felyn means the sort of yellowish, brownish uplands that are poorly cultivated or not easily cultivated, and that's a fair description of the area. around Helvellyn itself. The change of Hâl Felyn to Helvellyn is later. But why do we have a Welsh place name up in Cumbria? Well, many of you will already know that Cumbria corresponds to Cymru, Wales. In fact, it was a word that many Britons or Welsh speakers used for themselves. It means compatriots, if you wish, people of the same area. It might even mean Roman citizens corresponding to Ciwys. Anyway, but that's another story. So Cumbria gets its name from the last Brythonic or Welsh-speaking kingdom in the north of Britain. This is initially known as Kingdom of Dumbarton, and in its later manifestation it's called the Kingdom of Strathclyde. There are historical reasons for the changes in the name. But what happens in 870, the Vikings, or rather the Norse, take the capital, if you wish, or one of its most important defended sites, the Rock of Dumbarton. And Dumbarton means the fort of the Britons, the fort of the Welsh speakers. So in 870 this falls, the king's taken off, he's taken to Dublin and he's drowned. A vast amount of slaves are taken, and you might have imagined that this attack in 870 would have meant the end of this northerly Welsh-speaking kingdom. But no, something remarkable happens in the 10th century, something we're not entirely sure about how it happens, why it happens. But within a century of the fall of its capital, the Rock of Dumbarton, the Strathclyders, the Welsh speakers of the Strathclyde, Glasgow area, seem to have imposed their rule on a vast area encompassing southwest Scotland and the northern Lake District, Cumbria, and possibly large parts of the lowlands. It's even possible they may have taken Lothian for a time. And this was a very, very powerful kingdom in its time. Its features in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, for example, the Strathclyde Welsh. So it was an expanded kingdom, and certainly in some areas this meant a linguistic expansion. That is, the kings granted newly conquered, newly taken estates to their followers, and in some places this caused a language shift. There might have been a big significant immigration of Welsh speakers from the Strathclyde area. There may even have been surviving Welsh Brythonic speakers in this period, in these areas. It's uncertain. So this Hâl Felyn, rather than being a survivor from a very, very ancient pre-Anglo-Saxon Brythonic period, is probably one of the names of the Cumbrian expansion, is what we call it, when this kingdom expanded. So it's quite a common name, not a complicated one. It means the yellowish, uncultivated highlands, highland area. It's Brythonic, and its coining is probably in the Cumbrian expansion period.